Hello to all my fellow benders out there. I hope you all are doing well today on this new weekend here. First off, I just want to say thank you all so much for all the support recently. It has just been truly great and awesome to see the love that's been shown to me by so many people, and I hope it continues to grow as we get into the new live-action adaptation from Netflix for Avatar The Last Airbender, which is very quickly approaching, as I've said many times in my last several videos. And today, I wanted to go over something very interesting that was brought to me by a fan who left a comment in one of my recent videos with some interesting information that I wanted to discuss today for a cool little video idea. It is everything with regards to details and information around the episodes from the cast and crew, and also we will run through and unravel what could be the synopsis of what each episode does if a lot of this information could be potentially true and accurate. My fellow benders of all four nations, welcome to Uncle Iroh's Tea Shop, the Jasmine Dragon. Find yourself a seat, grab some jasmine tea, and enjoy this video. Like with my recent videos, let's see if we can hit a goal of 250 likes on this one. So as usual, we are going to jump right into everything, as on screen here I am going to be showing a bunch of screenshots as to a comment that was left by a person in one of my recent videos who gave me information that honestly I was not fully aware of until he told me about it. The user CinemaLen1877 says that he did a thorough analysis of the IMDb page with the cast and crew information for the show, and when doing this he managed to unravel with some good guesses about what the narrative tie-ins of the first season will be for each episode. I read through everything that he talked about, and honestly it gave me a good idea to want to make a video about it, so let's run through it now. As a disclaimer, to be clear, IMDb is not usually always the most accurate place for information like this, so please take all of this with a grain of salt. But also understand this, some of this could be accurate, and if you are not wanting to go in with all this information in mind before watching the show, you have been warned. Some considerations that he lays out here to start. They will remake the opening of the series, and the Kyoshi actress should be a silhouetted figure who bends Earth, and in parentheses, he says she is credited to appear in every episode. Now, this is very interesting because the way I interpret this information is that if you remember the cartoon, the intro features Katara with her monologue as she describes the four elements at the start. I almost wonder if this is an indication that maybe they are changing up who is doing the elements in the intro. In the original cartoon, you had Master Paku who did the water bending, Azula who did the fire bending, Aang who did the air bending, and then someone who I honestly can't identify doing the earth bending. I'm thinking that maybe they replaced whoever is doing the earth bending with Kyoshi. This is also interesting given the fact that in The Legend of Korra, for that show, its intro, she is the one doing the earth bending there. So I guess there is a little bit of a switch up here if we are to go along with that, given there is no rhyme or reason why the character of Kyoshi should show up in an episode that's not the Kyoshi Village arc and the intro cutscene. To move on to the next couple of parts, he points out that the character of Gyatso should also appear in the opening, and the actor is credited in all episodes. Gran Gran, through speculation, will narrate the opening, and the actress is credited in all episodes. Again, this is very fascinating because these characters are not supposed to show up as much as they do given what the journey of the original cartoon goes. There's clearly some other use these characters have, like a Gyatso for example. Maybe he actually replaces Aang as the airbender in the opening credits. And then with regards to Gran Gran being speculated as to be the one narrating the opening instead of Katara, I again don't know how I feel about that. I guess in some way it adds more of a different storytelling aspect to it all, in the sense that you get a lot of this in other entertainment where it's usually an elder or the older person who is wise with knowledge and stories, who has lived through a long enough life, who can tell these kinds of things to other people. I'm not really sure on that, to be honest. It's more of a guess. I'll be curious to see everybody's speculation on that, but again, take this with a grain of salt. We don't know if this is true. The next couple of points revolve around the characters of Azula, Ty Lee, Mei, Suki, and Yukari, which I believe he made a mistake on. There's no character called Ikari in Avatar. Now, Azula, I can understand her showing up as much as she does, given that we know she's going to be getting new scenes, of which my best guess is that a lot of it will retain around them showing off the story of the character before she first shows up in the original cartoon, when Ozai gives her the task to bring back Zuko and Iroh. This will also make sense along with the fact that both Ty Lee and Mei show up because, after all, she is friends with them, and maybe we get some new scenes with them in the backstory behind what they were doing before all this went down. Now, Suki and Yukari, on the other hand, is very strange to me. There is a part of me that really believes this might be an inaccurate statement, given again these characters do not show up as much as they do in the cartoon, or in this case mainly Suki. Suki is there for one episode, and so I'm not exactly sure why she would still be there unless maybe they are adding her in to the gang's group very early on this time around. But even again, I don't know if that is accurate, and so maybe IMDb made a mistake here with this information. Cinema Lem says that he supposes that the series will unfold other subplots and delve deeper into the characters in situations that we didn't see in the cartoon, and he is very accurate with that statement. We know for a fact that the show is going to show off a lot of stuff that was not given to us in the cartoon to help give more backstory and development to all these other characters, like another example with Ozai. He doesn't show up prominently until way later on in the cartoon, and so I guess in this case, this could be the case for a lot of the other different side characters potentially and what they're going to be doing with their own stories. He says his theory is that the way the cast is listed by episode, it is possible that in parallel to the Zuko and Zhao plot with the Avatar, we have a parallel plot for Azula, which doesn't cross the path of these characters, which would be faithful to the animation, as if Azula went through the trail that Zuko and Zhao left in their search for the Avatar, fighting battle with the Kyoshi warriors just like in the episode The Lost Days of Appa from the second season of the animation. Azula, Ty Lee, and Mei would never meet Aang or set foot in the Northern Water Tribe, which would follow the OG animation as we would see those behind the scenes of Azula's performance, reasonably explaining why Suki and her mother appear in so many episodes. The way that he puts this, I have to say, is honestly very sound, and to a point I could kind of see that this would be the case if it were to happen. We already know for a fact that the story is going to be heavily changed, and so it seems like they are flipping around certain timelines and plot lines with each other to correlate with the idea of developing characters, but also keeping everything in line with how the timeline is set from the cartoon. It seems that everything from point A to point B will be the same, but certain things will be moved around to where we might not see a certain plot point until a little later on, as opposed to when we did originally see it in the cartoon. This now leads into his episode breakdown, as he starts off with episode 1, which is The Boy in the Iceberg. Probably an introduction of about 10 minutes or a little longer, and in parentheses he says a large amount of cast credited for this part, with the war 100 years ago, plus an attack to the air nomads, plus events from episode 1 and 2 of the animation. All of this seems to make sense in correlation for the most part, and I would have thought originally that the very first episode was going to follow those first couple of episodes in the cartoon where we were in the Southern Water Tribe and they were going through the background and details of what the 100-Year War was about, especially given the fact that they are going to show off the genocide of the Southern Air Temple. Episode 2 is titled Warriors, and he says that this episode should start with a quick visit to the Southern Air Temple, plus a trip to Kyoshi Island, plus the attack from Zhao, plus an ending with a sequence inspired by an episode from the second season of the animation in which Aang incorporates Kyoshi. For those wondering, the episode he's talking about is of course Avatar Day, where Aang was put on trial for crimes that he didn't really commit, but it was actually Avatar Kyoshi. Again, I think this would all make a lot of sense given the trajectory of what the cartoon originally did. We know that our main gang does go to the Southern Air Temple, and we know they go to Kyoshi Island, which is where Zhao does attack. Same thing goes with Kyoshi showing up. We've already seen a shot of that happening, and so again, all this information sounds very accurate and on point. Episode 3 is simply titled Omashu, and he describes it in that this episode will have June showing up, being hired to track down Aang, Uncle Iroh and Zuko, who appear in Omashu, plus a sequence of the OG episode of the animation with regards to everything around Bumi. Again, I have to give this man credit here. A lot of this sounds very accurate in concept with how it lines up. As I said earlier, they are going to mix together some plot lines that were spread out and separated with regards to when each episode happened in the cartoon. June doesn't show up until episode 15 in the cartoon, and so they are bringing her in way earlier on if this is accurate. Zuko and Iroh are not supposed to go to Omashu, and so this is a little bit of a change-up as well. Now, I will say the one thing that Cinema here doesn't mention that I think he might have forgotten is that we also meet the characters of the Mechanist and his son Teo as well in Omashu. They are going to combine these Northern Air Temple arc characters in with this episode as well, as we've seen from the footage in the trailers and promos. Episode 4, which is titled Into the Dark, is described as the Jet episode, plus a continuation of the chase with June, Zuko, and Iroh, plus some elements from the waterbending scroll episode. I think in tandem this would make sense that a lot of this stuff would be explored in this part of the season at the midway point. This is basically kind of combining 3 episodes into one, sort of. Episode 5 is titled Masks, and he says that in the old released list, this episode was number 6, but on IMDb it is listed as number 5. This episode must be the Blue Spirit episode plus elements from the OG animation episode The Storm. Here again, this would all make sense and line up correctly since the Storm and Blue Spirit episodes in the original both connect with each other, and I imagine they might add in some other stuff as well, given each episode is an hour long. Combining both those episodes into one would not be long enough. I'd be curious to see what else they could add in. We do know for a fact that the Agni Kai between Zuko and Ozai is going to get an extension, so we'll just have to wait and see. Episode 6 is called Spirited Away, and no, I don't mean the Miyazaki movie Spirited Away. This one is an adaptation of the Winter Solstice arc with Heibai plus Roku on the Half Moon Island. So again, all this makes a lot of sense given the Winter Solstice arc takes place in the middle portion of Book 1, but again, this is now being maneuvered around given the timeline from the cartoon, so we are getting this one much later on, it seems. It is a very important episode, and in my opinion, this could be the biggest episode of the entire season, given that it is covering the Winter Solstice arc, which, knowing what some of the details are going to be like in this Netflix adaptation, I think it is the most important thing that they need to get down right episode-wise. Now, this next part is interesting as he explores episode 7, which is titled The North. He says that this episode should show the Northern Air Temple. The Mechanist and Teo are scheduled for this one. Paku is also casted in this one, so the gang should arrive in the Northern Water Tribe at the very end of the episode. He notes that in the trailer we see Aang and Teo flying through Omashu, but this could be an unfinished scene that misleads us. In the end, the location of this is the Northern Air Temple. He says this is common in productions like this. Now, I'll be totally honest, at first when I first saw what the episodes were titled a while back when that was released, I had thought that this would just be the episode that brings us right into the Northern Water Tribe, but I never for once thought it would be an exploration of the Northern Air Temple. That episode, the Northern Air Temple in the original cartoon, is the one that comes right before they head into the Northern Water Tribe, so in concept it would make sense for them to go there first. But then again, it is weird that we would potentially be seeing them meet up with Teo and the Mechanist multiple times in both Omashu and the Northern Air Temple, so maybe my original point of them meeting Teo and the Mechanist in Omashu in the original 3rd episode, it might not actually happen, and this might be the first time that we see them. I'll be very curious to see how you all think about this prediction here given these details. Here, this next part, he says that in this episode we have credited Azula, Ty Lee, and May. He says in parentheses that Ty Lee and May are also in episode 3, which I imagine should show them in the Fire Nation, in episode 5, which would show them knowing about the Avatar's escape, making so that Fire Lord Ozai sends Azula to the Earth Kingdom to go after the gang. I imagine that in this episode they can confront the Kyoshi warriors. Again, to this point that Cinnamon brings up, if this prediction is sound and accurate, I am really curious to see how this play out. Would they really meet the Kyoshi warriors this earlier on? Again, if anything is apparent throughout what Cinema is talking about here, it really does feel like they are moving away from what the cartoon did with regards to character reveals and character meetups and first-time appearances in terms of who sees who. Again, if this information is accurate, I really just want to be able to see if it's executed well on screen in the actual show. With regards to episode 8, which is titled Legends, he says that it must be based on the last 2 episodes of the original animation with the Siege of the North. Again, in concept, this all lines up pretty well, I would say. Then to this point then, maybe the episode ends exactly like how the original cartoon did, with Ozai sending Azula on her quest. Again, we'll all have to wait and see and find out if this is all truly accurate, and as a reminder, IMDb sometimes doesn't always get things right, but I'm definitely down to believe that this could be very accurate given how Cinema here puts it in his comment. Some things that I do want to point out in case anybody here didn't notice that he did not mention, as he says here in this last portion, is that he thinks that they probably will not have pirates, they will not have Bato from the Water Tribe, we won't have Zhang, we will not have the Great Divide, we won't have the Fortune Teller episode, and we won't have Haru. If anybody here remembers back last week, I made a video about this with regards to which episodes I wanted to see adapted and not see adapted. In that very video, I mentioned how the Great Divide was one that should not be, and if he's correct on this, this lines up with what I said. I had also mentioned that The Deserter, which is the episode about Aang learning firebending from Zhang, would probably be that one that I wouldn't have to see either, even though a lot of you did convince me of some good points to see why it should be adapted. The Fortune Teller episode not being there also makes sense. Bato and Zhang have not been casted, and then neither has Haru. So basically, in context, it seems like 16 episodes from the cartoon are going to be getting a good level of adaptation, while 4 will not. However, I will say I'm still a little dubious on his point about them not having pirates, given that they are doing the waterbending scroll episode, and given the fact that we know they are going to be blowing up Zuko's ship like what they did in the cartoon with Xiao ordering the pirates to do so. Maybe this time they use different people instead of the pirates, but I can't say for certain. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, just some really cool information to break down and have a conversation about with regards to what my man Cinema here gave to me in the comments. If you all do want to go on IMDb yourselves, I think he backs up this information quite well if you do go through each and every single one of the pages on IMDb for the show and its episodes. With all that being said though, that's where we are going to end off today's fun little cool video, and this is now the most important part of every video, and I want to hear all your thoughts in the comments below with regards to all the information we talked about today and my commentary on it. If you did enjoy this video and are ready for season 1, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new here, and turn on that notification bell for whenever I upload next. On your way out of Uncle Iroh's tea shop, be sure to let him know how much you appreciate his jasmine tea and his words of wisdom that come with it. I hope everyone here has a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you all soon for more Avatar.